Plugin of the week is the Waves LoAir. The LoAir plugin by Waves is primarily designed for post-production work, and but it can be used in music applications. The primary design is meant to be a way of mixing in the low-frequency content from mono, stereo, left, center, right, quad 5.0 mixes into a sub situation. And the way that this primarily works is by setting up and this is just calling up a down mixer here just so you can kind of see this, so it'll kind of melt all of this stuff into stereo so you can hear it in stereo. But what we have is a surround effect, which is just like a very simple explosion that occurs here on the backside. So I'm going to pull out all of the extra gut, and big explosion. Okay, so we have a big explosion here. So what does the LoAir plugin do, and why would we use it? So the way that it basically works is that it's creating subharmonic, it's like a subharmonic synthesizer that's bringing in low or sub frequencies, rumble into things. And this is where it's primarily used for effects. So if we were mixing sounds from individual tracks, so this is a 5.0 or 5.1 sample actually, of an explosion. So we would have this in full surround if we were monitoring in surround. And what I can do is I could decide from each of those channels how much am I mixing in from the left and right, from the center, from the left sound and right surround, and from the actual LFE channel itself. And so this is at full level, 0 dB, and I can balance these out. So what this does is it feeds into something called LoAir, which is bringing in sub-frequencies. And the way that this works is everything starts with the crossover, or the range control. This by default is set to 80 Hertz, which is sort of a classic crossover point for subs in a 5.1 system, particularly for consumers, consumer electronics. But you can make it up as high as 120, which is meant to be more of a maximum. And then you can bring it down lower if you have a much larger main system. Now, the idea here is that when we set a crossover point here, we can mix in more or additional of that low frequency below that point, and we can also generate subharmonics below that point. And this is where these two mix controls kind of come in. We have an output level control, which is going to control, in this case, the LFE output, and we can actually align the direct and the process signal. What this does is it delays the direct signal so it matches the aligning or lines up to the subharmonic synthesis effect that's created underneath this. And then there's a trim plugin which gives you the overall trim. So what I've done here is I've fed in these individual things, and let's hear our explosion, quite loud. And then, so what we can see here is that we could see in the submixer that this is our LFE channel. So just to kind of show you that this would be feeding nothing into it, you can see that there's nothing going into that effect, and now I can kind of bring this in. So this is sort of like the thunder of God we got going on here. Now, when if I want to add in some sub frequency into this, this is where the LoAir thing comes in. And now this adds like a whole other octave down to the bottom end. Now, what you're going to hear on this side of things is that we're going to need to, trim down the overall output, or the LFE output in this case. But you can hear like that sub frequency effect. So let me just bypass this so you can hear without it. Oops. The two shortcuts at the same time. So there's some sub frequency in there, and this is going to add a little bit more in there. And that's what gives you that real huge rumble. And then you can also mix in some low frequencies here, just to really rattle things along. And then, make sure that you pull down your output gain so that you're not clipping. And that's basically the way that the plugin works from a post-production standpoint, and it's meant to feed signals into your LFE. Now, if we just use it from a simple, we can also use it for something as simple as just like a bass track. So in this case, what I have here, just to kind of This is the original bass sound, and you can hear like an exaggerated version. I'm going to set a crossover point that's like closer to like 60 cycles or so, and then kind of work from a lower sub point so we can kind of build in some sub frequencies in here. Now here we have like a slightly different thing. We have a mix of the direct signal. This is the overall output, which I'm going to back off here. And we have the direct signal, and then we can mix in, we'll just kind of leave it up and see if it clips, and then we'll pick it up from there. So you can hear that thumping low end that's added in on the bottom of this. Now this is adding in the actual amount of the low end, so I don't need to add any of this in. So what this can do is it can add in just a little bit of sub or low end into a sound to kind of make it sit in and mix a little bit. So let's pick up where and there is like a little bit of a lag to the sound, which makes it more of like a post-production application. It does fit. I'm exaggerating it a bit. You wouldn't add in that much, but it would be a way of adding in artificially low end into a sound that maybe just doesn't have it naturally, where going to an EQ is not going to give you any more of what's just not there. So it's basically designed for subharmonically synthesizing low or sub-frequency sounds into your audio signal. So there you have it. Real simple plugin, very powerful in the right application. There you have it, the Waves LoAir plugin.